Okay, well, thank you. That, it really helps me when I know what people do and to understand, like the planning division. I think I give training to Adams County in Colorado every week for their planning because of the growth and expansion. So we're going to go through, I'm going to kind of do a 101 of what the census is and what we do. I think we have an identity crisis, basically. People think we count America every 10 years and close up shop and come back. But we actually have ongoing programs all the time. So I'll talk about that. And then we'll take a break, and then the second half, we'll dig into one tool, which is the data.census.gov. Which is our premier tool, but we do have some specific tools for veterans. It's a new program that we're developing with the Economic Development Association, and it's placing where veterans are. So we're working with them to where are they going and what are they doing when they're out of the service. And then we have a whole line of local employment dynamics. And we're not going to go through that today, but I'm happy to do another training or go through any of that. And that data is not collected by surveys, it's collected through local governments. So we collect that data and publish it quarterly, and it shows what's going on in the workforce more currently and the industries and occupations and ages. So we'll go ahead and get started kind of with the 101. So let's see. Okay, so I'm part of the data dissemination and training branch, and I report to DC. There are 36 of us, I think, right now across the country, and this is our job, is to help people access data. It's a free service of the Department of Commerce, and it's any data that we produce at the Census Bureau that we help people access or train, or sometimes we hold the data for them. One of the programs that our team developed was Census Academy maybe 6 years ago, because we realized not everybody works the same business hours, and when they are, they don't have the ability to learn the data or train. So it's available free. That we have data gems, which are short kind of how-to videos, and we have courses. And then we also have a series of webinars that is ongoing. The webinars are recorded, but you can join live if you want to sign up for any of the webinars and ask questions of any of the subject matter experts or participate in any of those. So today we're going to go through who we are and what we do, and the American Community Survey specifically, and then why geography matters at the Census Bureau. And then we'll go through kind of the homepage, navigating it. If you've ever been on the homepage, it's not always really intuitive. We'll take a break, and then we'll dive into data.census.gov. So has anyone here used the Census Bureau website or tried to use the Census Bureau website? A little bit. A handful? Okay. And did you find what you were looking for? No, yeah, it's a problem, right? Yeah, we really have a problem. We have so much information that it becomes cumbersome. So at the Census Bureau, we're under the Department of Commerce, and our mission is to serve as the nation's leading provider of quality data about its people and the economy. We operate under Title 13 and 26, which means we can't publish any statistics that identify a person or a business. So we have to suppress that data if someone can be identified in the data. For example, if I'm a doctor and we have occupational information, and I can find myself because there's only one listed in the geographic level, we suppress that. We can't publish it. And the same for any business, because we do collect data from businesses, and we publish data on the economy in the NAICS codes. So we collect data for other federal agencies. I think people don't know this. So those unemployment numbers that come out the first Friday of the month, that's us. We collect that data for BLS, for Bureau of Labor Statistics. We have the workforce in place and we have access to administrative records. And we're the only agency that does. They're scrubbed before they come to us, but we have all tax and administrative records of the Census Bureau. So we collect data for all federal agencies. And then when it's published, the sponsoring agency, we give it to them for the official publication. So that's why you hear the Bureau of Labor Statistics announced today, or Department of Commerce, because we're all under Department of Commerce, but we collect it and then give it to the sponsoring agency or co-publish it. Often we co-publish a lot of data, in particular with BLS. Some of the other big ones that we collect data for are HUD, for the Fair Housing Market Baseline. We do a housing survey every 2 years. We do a hunt and fish survey for the Forest Service. So we have a lot of surveys that we're doing. And we have on an average 120 to 130 surveys running at a time. We have started modernizing the statistics. So when we're doing that, we're integrating information that we collect on one survey into another, so we don't burden respondents and ask the same question multiple times. So we're integrating all of that information so that we have a more streamlined effect and it's more efficient. We've also we've been doing international economic data, but we are now mapping the globe. We're the official providers of geography at the Census Bureau for the federal government. And we've been asked by the UN to map the globe, which has been kind of cumbersome because these countries change and they're not as stable in their geography as we are. And some of them are very historic and they've never mapped. They don't have official boundaries. So that's one of the programs we're working on, as well as demographic and economic data for international programs. We have, I think, 78 countries published at this point. But the big thing that we do is the key programs are, we do the economic census every 5 years. Has anyone ever heard of that? The economic census? Oh, good. No one's ever heard of it. I'm so glad someone's heard of it. It's mandatory. It's mandatory. We do it every 5 years and it sets the baseline for all the economic information. We do that because we publish the NAICS codes. And so we do that. It takes us 5 years to publish it, and then we start again. In collaboration with that, we do a census of governments, where we actually count the governments and identify what the governments are and what their tasks are and what they do. And from 2012 to 2017, we almost doubled the number of governments in America. We've just grown, and it's not just cities and towns. It's water districts, anything that's an official government. And then, of course, we do the count, the decennial count every 10 years of the population and housing. And then some of the ongoing programs that we have that are pretty big are the American Community Survey. Has anyone heard of this, or are you aware of it? Okay, so we'll go into details about that one, but it's a really big one, and it's the data that most people use. We do the current population survey for Bureau of Labor Statistics that those quarterly and monthly reports come out from. We do that the combining of data that I mentioned. And then we work with local governments to get vital statistics, which are the births, the deaths, and the migration into an area, and produce population estimates every year. So some towns, you see the population below their sign, that's that number. So we don't count everybody, but we use those county records to publish those. So the American Community Survey is a big one because it replaced the census long form after 2000. We used to have a short and a long form, and the long form, if you were the lucky winner to get that, you had a lot of questions to answer. But it gave us the characteristics about how we live in America, not just the counts of the people in the housing and the age and so on. Congress decided after 2000, we need data every year. We're growing too rapidly as a nation, and so we started the American Community Survey. It is detailed information, and I'll show you in a minute about the information that we collect. The data from the American Community Survey, what we collect can change. We can only collect data at the federal government if funding is tied to it. If funding is not tied to data, we cannot ask questions or collect it. We get a lot of questions about the LGBT community. If direct funding isn't tied, we can't ask questions about it. So things like that kind of are evolving, but we can only ask questions when they're tied to funding. We can't ask just because we're curious or the neighbor wants to know. We survey 3.5 million households a year. Every county is surveyed, and it's random sampling on this survey. And it's a mandatory survey. It does inform on most of the federal funding that other government agencies use. And it covers about 40 topics with subtopics under that. And it has about 300 evidence-based federal programs that distribute money based on the data from this. So we have this survey going on all the time, and we release data every year for the ACS. And we release it in 3 formats. The first one is if the population is 65,000 or more, we release it for the previous year that we collected it. So we gather it, tabulate it, and it comes up the following year. If the population, which most of Montana falls under that, we have a 1-year supplement. It's not as many tables, but it's for any geography that has 20,000 or more. And again, out here in the West, we have very few places that qualify for that. So what we have is the 5-year estimate, and we publish this data every year, but we aggregate the data of a collection over a 5-year period and substitute that time so we can publish the data at low geographies without compromising identity. So the time is substituted, and then we have that low level geography that's published down to a tract level and some block group levels. So that is really beneficial for all of us out here in the West, because prior to this, we never qualified for funding. There was never enough data to publish the data. So it was only highly densely populated areas that got funding. So the ACS has really helped us come a long way to distribute funding more evenly. Some people don't like the 5-year because they feel like it's not current enough, but the margin of error is lower, and because the sample size is larger. So you substitute currency with a more reliable data set when you use the 5-year, and 5-year is available for everything. So you can get 5-year at the state, the county, down to tracts and some block groups.
Kimberly, what are some of the topics that are covered in that survey?
Oh, that's a great question. That's our next slide here. So it's like you read my mind. So these are topics, and then we have subtopics about each of them. So like on the economic side, we ask about income, and then we ask subtopics about income and benefits and employment status, occupancy, or I'm sorry, occupation, industry, and commuting. We ask about, when do you go to work? What time do you leave for work? And how long does it take you? And what direction do you go? Because people think, oh, the government's stalking me and they're tracking me, but it's really for infrastructure. We need to know where to put roads and transportation, and if you're not driving, is it public transportation that you're taking? So we ask detailed information about that. Then we ask the basic demographics about age, sex, race, Hispanic origin, and then we have a group quarters section. Group quarters is anybody that lives in an institutional housing, like dormitories, college dorms, prisons, elderly facilities. We do a group quarters separately because if you live in a group quarters, your basic needs are met. And you wouldn't then qualify for poverty because you have housing and food, and so your basic needs are met. So we do that separately. When we add the data, we include those populations in the ACS data publications, but they wouldn't qualify for someone that's in poverty or that doesn't have an income in those group quarters because those needs are met. So we collect that data a little differently. And then socially, we collect on ancestry, on citizenship status, which was really controversial over the last president. What should we collect? We've always collected on ACS. We ask, are you a citizen? We ask, where did you come from? When did you come here? And so it's published in ACS, not the decennial. Disability status, education, fertility, grandparents as caregivers, a really growing topic. We see a lot of generational caregivers now, and language spoken at home. Migration is where did you reside and where were you a year ago? Same household, same county, state, out of the country. Military service, we have a whole series on veterans, and we'll go into that in our case study example about the details we collect on veterans. When did they serve? What's their education level, and so forth. And then the undergraduate field of degree and the levels of that, and we ask about year of entry if you're foreign born. And then, so you can see how detailed the ACS is compared to decennial, where we just ask basic questions. Some of the newer questions on ACS that I don't have included, really, their subtopics are internet use at home. And then we have more details about disability. The ACS subjects can change, and they do change depending on what we need to know, and that goes through Congress. Congress comes up with needs about, we need to distribute funding based on maybe fiber network or, who has internet. And then they add those questions. We'll have another one this year. We'll have change in those questions. But that goes through Congress. The decisions are all made there. So are there questions, any other questions about what we do and the data?
So I do a lot of work with grant writing. And so when you go through Department of Transportation and they look at communities that are transportation disadvantaged, right? So that would be one of the other agencies you work with, I assume, for them to help them determine that. And it seems to be kind of a nexus with poverty.
Right. Yeah, that's a good one. We used to publish the transportation analysis zoning report. We lost our funding to do it, but we do work with departments of transportation from this survey and some of the current population data. The CPS data.
So then also with EPA, when I do brownfields permits, they're looking for information that's linking rates of cancer, airborne, like asthma and those sorts of things. Does that intersect?
Yeah, some of the data is.
Because it seems to be really spotty here as well.
Yeah. So that's US. That's under USDA. that collects those details, and they work with CDC.
Okay.
So we do have some healthcare data. This survey, the ACS collects about health insurance and disability, and there's 3 levels of disability: ambulatory, vision, and hearing.
Nothing related to.
The cancer, no, those are all under the HHS. There's I think 13 divisions under at the White House, at the executive branch, and they're one. HHS is the big one. So USDA collects data on health and food. We do some of that, but not to that detail. The other thing about data, there's a trade-off for currency. So if we want current data, it's very high level. It's usually national, state, or regional. But if you want low level data, like census tracts or neighborhoods or towns or cities, you have to wait a year for it to come out from the ACS. ACS is the only one that publishes low level like that. HUD does some city, but they're specific. But most of the stuff from HHS is all going to be state and county, and some of it even is only selective. They only do some. It's a bummer because it leaves everybody else out, but they concentrate on the masses of the population. So yeah, I wish I could help you more with that one.
That's right.
Kimberly, what is HHS?
Health and Human Services. Yeah, I'm sorry. We all have these acronyms. Like, for example, I think it's awful. We have an office in Denver, and I work from home. I don't go to this office, but the acronym is DNRO. Does anyone know what that? It's Do Not Resuscitate Order to like the rest of the world, and I think we really need to change that office acronym because that's awful, right? Like we're supposed to count the population. Okay, so let's see. It's almost 9. So I'm going to talk a little bit about geography and why it matters because it's a really big deal at the Census Bureau. It is central to the work that we do because it provides the framework for how we collect data, for the surveys that we do, and then the tabulation and dissemination of it. We do not determine boundaries. They are done at the state, the county, the city level, but they're reported to the Census Bureau. So when we publish data, it goes out in the correct boundaries. So we're kind of the gatekeepers of geography for the nation, if you will. And it's important to kind of understand geography because it can really change the data that you're looking at. So this is how we look at geography at the Census Bureau. This is our hierarchy chart. And from the top at nation, through that line down the middle, through census blocks, that data is called the redistricting data, and it nests within itself. So at the very bottom, census blocks are the lowest level of geography that we publish data at. And the only data that's published at a census block is decennial data. So only every 10 years can you get data that low. Then a cluster of census blocks is called a block group. And a cluster of block groups is called a census tract. And a census tract is usually neighborhood level. It doesn't have a size in particular, but everything we do is based on population. And so a census tract, when we redo the redistricting every 10 years, we do it for the distribution of representation. So where are the representatives for the local governments and the federal and the state? So that's the purpose of the redistricting. Census tracts is where we start. So we ask the local governments, okay, what's going on in your area? And in Montana, we work with the Economic and Commerce out of Helena, which is the state data center. Every state has a state data center who is a liaison to the Census Bureau and works with us about changing geographies, reporting information. It's where all of the data is collected and compiled and sent to us on the population estimates. So they're really important because they know the local information and they report it up to us. Census tracts change based on growth or depopulation in an area. So if an area is growing, a census tract can split and become 2 tracts. And then if it's losing population, the state data center might decide to merge 2 tracts so that there's enough population to have quality data. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. And then the census tracts nest within a county. So you can add up all the census tracts and always get your county. It's a good way to break down a county and not cross boundaries. And then counties always nest within a state, states and divisions, regions, and nations. So those always nest within one another. Everything on the left and everything on the right can change every year. Those geographic levels can change and get reported to us, and we will change them for the following year of data. School districts are a big one. We see a lot of rural school districts merging, and we see school districts splitting or another growth in school districts. And then the other big thing on here is under states in the green place level. Places are how we designate cities, towns, and something called CDPs, census designated places. They are places, and you have a lot of them in Montana, that are not official cities or towns, but they act like it. They have a population and there's an economic development, and the state data center says, hey, there's this area out there that we want to recognize data for. And so we publish data for CDPs. So an official city, an official town has to be legally a city or town. They have to have a mayor, they have to have a voting board. But if they don't, and they're still an area, we call it a CDP, we treat them like a city and town when we publish data. Okay, so to kind of help with the nesting, this is something our geographer put together so you can see how the nesting works for the hierarchy. So we have the state of California, and then in the state we have a county, and in that county the tract, and within that tract we have a block group, blocks, and I'm sorry, that's the end of it. Then the block is the very smallest. So those all add up. Technically, you could add up all the blocks and get the total of the nation. So Montana geography has 56 counties, and you've had some changes if you use census tracts. During the 2010, the state data center here split Montana up quite small. They were thinking ahead and said, hey, let's really get our tracts in line. But then there wasn't data for some of those tracts. So between 2010 and 2020, they retracted some of that and merged some tracts. So if you're used to working in tracts and you see tract numbers change or disappear, that's why. Because they change and it's recommended by the state data center. You have 2 congressional districts, which is new. I've been working in Montana for some time, and it was like, we were like, yay, we get 2 up here now. Zip codes 368. We publish data for the economic information in zip codes. We do not for the demographic, meaning households. It's called a ZITCA, a zip code tabulation area. It's an acronym that we have. Zip codes are superficial geographies based on postal carrier routes. And so we simulate them in the ZITCA, but if the postal carrier route changes, we don't keep up with it. We only will change it every year. So we call them ZITCAs. We publish data at unified school districts. We also do a primary and upper grade, but most of it you'll find at the unified school districts. And then at the place level. So you can see there's 235 CDPs. They're really important to Montana that we have them because there are more CDPs than there are cities and towns. So you can find data at a variety of geographies and kind of slice it or dice it in a way that you want. And I've shared the slides with Sarah. So if anybody wants the slides, I'll put them in a PDF if you want them in a PDF for reference. So this is why it's important to understand geographies, because we publish data at what we call metro or micropolitan areas. And if you look at the Kalispell metropolitan area, it's the, the county nearly, where the city of Kalispell is much smaller. So if I'm applying for funding or I'm trying to see who I service in my area, there's a big difference between the city and the metro area. And chances are you're serving the metro area, not just the city. So it's the larger population that you're actually serving. And this example is showing the civilian veterans. So you can see there's a big difference in the difference between the metro and what's considered the city boundaries. We're going to talk a minute about navigating the census website. And for those that have tried, it is not, I don't think it's easy, and I don't think it's intuitive. We are constantly surveying our data users as to what they want and how they want things. And the responses we get back most of the time are, why can't it be like Google? Why can't you just, I type in what I want, it give me what I want. We have a couple of problems with that. We don't have Google developers, and we have data changing so rapidly that to organize it in that way, we can't always do a smart search. And I'll give you an example. Smart searching, like a zip code, if I put those in the 6 digits in, you might get the NAICS code for hairdressers back from the Census Bureau because it's also 6 digits. So we can't read minds. So we don't know, do you mean a zip code? Do you mean a NAICS code? So you're working towards that, but it's harder than it sounds. So what we resolved on, and this is always changing, is primary tabs across the top of the homepage. The first one is topics, and the topics is truly a list of all the topics that we provide data on or that we have definitions for. We do not have things like immigrants. That's not a term we have. We have foreign born, but we don't have immigrants. So it'll give you the definition and how we use it for every topic in there. And the next tab is, and I'm sorry, under the topics, if you click on any of the topic pages, it will bring you to a page that has all the information about what surveys we collect information for that topic on, and how frequently it comes out, and who the sponsoring agency is, what geographic levels we publish that data for. So topics is really helpful, and I think people don't use it because they don't know what they can find there. Data and maps is truly where we house our data. We have 2 pages of data tools, data products that we publish data in. And our goal is always to kind of streamline it to one, but we have data coming from so many places at so many levels that it's very hard to condense it down and still publish it. So we'll probably never get it down in one tool, but we're working towards that. Surveys and programs is literally the list of surveys that we are conducting. And if you click on any of those, it gives you that full list of all the surveys, and it gives you the information about the survey, who the sponsoring agency is. It'll hyperlink you to the sponsoring agency if they're the official provider, and any data that we have. And then the resource library seems to me like the place you should go for all the data, but it's really just a collection of magazines, if you will. It's videos and infographics that highlight specific things. It's just kind of the glamour of it, but it's not the real tools. And then we also have global search, which the global search is like any global search. You can type in and it gives information back and it gives a list. Our global search, we're migrating it towards, if we don't have the data, who does have the data, like CDC or HHS, who is collecting that kind of data. So you can put it in and we're trying to get it to that, what other agencies do that. There are a lot of federal agencies, and it seems like we're just one big federal government and we all know each other, but we don't. We don't even always know what each other does. So, and that's always changing too. Okay, and if all of that confused you, we have a product called Census Survey Explorer. And this is something that our team developed because we found that people don't look for data often enough to know where to go. So in this tool, you can put a subject in or a geography in, and it will tell you what surveys we collect data on that subject for. Or if you select a geography or you select frequency, it'll tell you what surveys collect for, you know, that frequency or how current that data is. We also have it available for subtopics. So on this example that you're seeing, it's for housing, and then the subtopics that we collect are construction, costs, expenditures, expenses, heating, the ownership of the homes, and all the costs of the home, like the total cost or the cost for running the home, the occupancy. We also collect building permits from, I don't know if the planning office does that in Kalispell, but sometimes it is a planning office that turns in any building permit. It seems like it should be easy for us to know how many new homes are being built in America or getting renovated, but every state does it differently. You can build an entire home in North Dakota without a permit. So it's hard to collect consistently across states. But they do get reported to us if the state collects it. Plumbing and kitchen facilities, some homes don't have them, and we collect that. They have people rent. The tenure, we also collect information about utilities and vacancy and seasonal homes, which up here you probably have some seasonal homes. And so we collect information about those. The year that it's built, how many vehicles are available at that home, and the year that people moved in. So that's an example of the subtopics that we collect on housing. And then there's details about all of those topics. So it's a lot of information, but this tool will help you kind of navigate the Census Survey Explorer. If you know a subject that you want, or you know a geography, you can put that in and it'll tell you, okay, this is where you need to start looking for data. Okay. So welcome back, everyone. We're going to now go through data.census.gov, which this tool is our premier tool. This is the new, if any of you ever use the American Fact Finder in the past, this is the new. And the difference is American Fact Finder, where we used to have data, was flat files. So it was just PDFs that were put in, PDFs of maps. This one is live. It's in the cloud. It's on it drives from our API. So it's always ingesting data from different resources. And so you can interact with it a little bit more. But what we're going to do is go through 3 examples. And we're going to go through these 3 case studies. And I'll demonstrate for you how to do it and then we can do it together. So the first one is, I don't even know what data is available for understanding my community. How do I begin a search on data.census.gov? And the second one is, I'm considering a new job near Marion in Flathead County. Can I afford to live there, or do I want to live in nearby counties? Where do I want to live? And then the next one is, if I'm applying for a grant that will help service veterans, where are the veterans and what are the details about them so that the money is applied correctly? So if I need to provide services for them, if they're disabled or if they need education, we can look at specific subjects for that. So the first case study is, I don't even know where to begin. So I just want to know about my community. So this is what we call a geographic profile. And if you go to the Census Bureau website, which is census.gov, I'll show you, we'll go through how we're going to get there. But this one is very easy because we'll go from census.gov to data.census.gov, and we'll just type in our city, and it'll return for us a whole bunch of information. So we're going to get a map, we're going to get tables and a bunch of information. So let's toggle over. And if you haven't gone to, how do I get the view on here to control?
Oh, let's see, I might need to change something.
Okay.
About that. First, my person who's really good at doing that on the spot is not available at the minute. Multiple displays extend. Okay. So it'll be screen is what's on there. Sure, thanks.
Okay, so from a Google or whatever search you do, if you just put in census.gov, and it will send you here to the homepage. And from the homepage, the tabs that we talked about before.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Sure.
John's always in the way though.
Under the data tab that we talked about before, so from the Census Bureau homepage, if you hover near this tab, data and maps, a drop-down menu shows up. And from this drop-down menu, we're gonna do this first item here, explore data on data.census.gov. So this first hyperlink on the left, and it sends us to the landing page. From the landing page, it still isn't really clear what to do or where to go from here. And it's giving you suggestions about what you can type in here. But maybe I don't even know. I don't know a subject. I just want to know about my community. And so if you type an area in here, and if I type in Kalispell, it starts to auto-populate what I can select from. I can select from the city, I can select from the county subdivision, or any of the other county subdivisions, but I want the city. So I'm gonna click on the first item there, and it'll send me directly into data.census.gov. So it gives me the total population for Kalispell at the top. So we've got Kalispell, it's identifying over here on the right, the map area in blue. And what it's telling me across the top header is that there are 2,960 tables and maps about Kalispell. That's a lot to have to dig through if I started going through all of these tables in the center. So you could technically start going through all these tables for the city of Kalispell, but that's a lot to start filtering through them. On the left, this tool has the filters. So whenever you're in data.census.gov, the filters are on the left, And it'll show you on the upper left that I have one item in the filter. And then the item that I have is the City of Kalispell. So I have one item in here and it gives me some of this information. Since you don't have the other step on your screen, if you look over here under the map, it gives you some information about Kalispell. So it starts to give you the information about the median household income, bachelor's degree or higher, employment rates. But below that is this view profile, this hyperlink. And if you click on that view profile, it gives you details about your community. So it shows that map again, and you can close it on the map to get a better view of it. But it gives below that the 9 topics that are most searched for an area. So looking at Kalispell, it gives me my population, and it tells me with a hyperlink what table P1 and what resource this population is coming from. So it's coming from the 2020 census that I get that number. The next one is telling me about employment at 61.9%. And it gives me the DP table, that's the table identifier. And it's telling me that I'm getting that information from the American Community Survey 5-year estimate. So when you're looking at data, you want to know what your source of it is, and that will cite it and give you the ability to go directly to that link. But if you scroll further down, the map appears then to the right.
We can drag that box away. It's blocking the view. Just minimize.
Okay,
It'll be still there that we can pop up if you want to.
okay, thank you.
Sorry.
But here then, if you scroll down, it gives you charts about the information. And this first chart is about the population. And so it's giving the population on the left by age in 5 age categories. And it gives you the male and the female. And you can see that the females over 85 are much higher than the males up here. Actually, all of them are through most of the upper years. So women are living longer. But what this also can tell us is what we can expect in workforce. You know, when we're looking at this, are we losing workforce? When we look at population pyramids, we never want it to be completely narrowed down, because that means we're losing that younger population. And then what's going to happen? We're all going to age and not have that population. So fortunately, we get a bounce back right here with these males, 5 to 9, and then the females under 5, which is pretty dramatic in the differences there. But below that, then we have some ancestry information, and the difference between ancestry, race, and ethnicity is that race is defined by the OMB, Office of Manage and Budget, which is the White House. They make all the definitions. Ancestry is where people say that their ancestors came from. So wherever people say their ancestor comes from is what goes in ancestry. But what people identify their race as is changing. We are adding more because we always are doing studies about this. And so we're adding the MENA, the African American from North America. And there's one more that we're adding, but you'll see that on the next census. During the census, we collect, I think, 68 race categories and then subcategories within those, but we only produce on 5 primary race categories and other. So the 5 primary and then everything else falls in other or in combination. So I could be more than one race. And race is how we identify what our race is. At this time, ethnicity is only one. Ethnicity is, are you Hispanic or Latino, or are you not Hispanic or Latino? It's like an accent on the race. That's always up for review. It's going to continue to be up for review at Congress because we're constantly doing surveys. How do people want to be identified? Data can only be collected and go out based on funding. So So we have to keep in compliance with that. But when OMB makes changes, we change from the point forward that that policy has changed. We do not backdate data. Yeah.
I kind of understand, like in ancestry, it says Irish, Italian, Norwegian, but Polish, that raises my big question. I know tons of people who are Ukrainian, who are Russian, but Polish, I don't know, hardly know one person who is Polish. So why not to put Eastern European? Why Polish?
That's how people identify. That's what people say. Yeah, right? It's interesting. what people
I
say.
don't know those
But I-
people who identify
I can
them.
address it a little bit. I don't know if it's still the case, but having come from the Midwest, the Chicago area had the largest Polish population outside of Poland.
But
The
I can
Northeast is
see that,
lots
yeah,
of Polish people.
Applying to us, like,
Cleveland.
I honestly don't know anybody who is Polish, but I know the other.
But that's here in
nationalities.
Montana.
Yeah, in Cleveland, Ohio, you'd know half the people are Polish.
They have their own radio stations. I mean, it's
Very,
a
the
huge
east
group in
So
the
it
Midwest.
probably comes from those other areas that,
It's how people identify. It's self-identification. We don't check on it. We don't
Yeah.
come to you and say, you know, I really don't think that you're Polish. We used to collect data, when we did censuses, we would say, your last name is Garcia, you're Hispanic. And then we learned, wait a second, that doesn't mean they're Hispanic. So we've evolved. It's all self-identification, for race and ancestry, and ethnicity. So you can tell us whatever you want and we believe it. But that is a good question, and it is how people identify their ancestry. Where did they come from? In others, we have, do they come from Europe and Eastern Europe, in foreign wars, but not in ancestry. It's specific to a country. And then we have language spoken at home, if it's other than English. And so you can go through this and you can see in kind of an interesting dynamic. It gives you the details about the most sought after information for Kalispell. And you can see in the veterans how many male and female veterans there are. There's significantly more male, which is quite common. The median income by types of family. So households and families are often confused. People are confused about that data because a household doesn't necessarily mean a family. When my son was in college, he was playing baseball in California and he lived in a house with 6 other guys. And it was a household, but none of them were related. They were all on the baseball team. And so that would be designated as a household, but not a family, not related. So that's another important thing to note, that a household doesn't necessarily mean a family. And then we have here poverty and poverty by age and age categories. And it goes on into education and employment. It'll go through all of those primary topics that we talked about. And then here's where you get that commuting, which this is, I love this. My hotel was like 10 minutes away. If I go 2 miles in Denver, whether I drive or Uber, I live downtown Denver, and for me to go to the Capitol, it's at least 30 minutes and it's 2 miles. It's just that much traffic and to get there and to park. So commuting and how people get around is also collected. And then the employment and the industry that people work in. And this is another one that people often get confused about: occupation and industry. I may work at a university, but it doesn't mean I'm a professor. It doesn't mean I'm an educator. So what your occupation and what industry you work in can be a little bit deceiving. And then work experiences and hours worked, and we're collecting more data about work at home. The work at home is increasing as well. So we'll see some big changes in that as well. And then housing and ownership, what people are paying for housing, and the housing units and the occupancy. So you can find a lot of details in the geographic profile, just typing an area in. So you can type in any geography and it'll give you that profile back of it. So are there any questions about that? How to just do a basic geographic profile search?
When is 2023 coming out?
When is what?
2023, because.
Oh, that's a really good question. Okay, so it does seem like the data is very old, right? Because 2022 is the most recent that we publish. When we publish it by the last collection date. So the 2022 data, we collected it through December of 2022, published the 1 year is published in September, the 5 year is published in December. So it takes us almost a year to tabulate and publish it. And it does take a long time for us because we have to look at every table at every geographic level and make sure we're not breaching Title 13 or 26. So we have to look at every line item and see that we're not going to compromise someone's identity, which takes us quite a while. So you'll see the 1 year data in September, and I think it's usually the beginning of December, like the 5th of December that the 5 year comes out. So it seems old, but it's like books are, when they publish it, it's the year that it's published. Ours is by the last collection date, not the publication date. So that's how that gets collected. Are there any other questions? Okay, so that's how you would begin a basic geographic search. The next example that we're going to go through, we're going to look at, okay, this is a very quiet group.
We're really just absorbing so much. We've got such great information.
Oh, good. Well, it's sometimes when it's quiet, I'm not sure if I'm talking over or boring people because it isn't riveting. I get it. It's statistics. And so a lot of people don't care.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
Okay, so the next one we're going to look at, we're gonna do look at the economic characteristics. And so we're going to do that, and we're going to look at Marion, the city of Marion. So to get out of where I am in here, I can do two things. I can hit advanced search over here, or if you click on the census logo in the upper left corner, it always sends you back to the home page. So it sends you back to the basic home page, and you're back where you can type something in or do the advanced search. So on this example, we are going to, we'll go right here. Okay, so I want to tell you about tables in data.census.gov because as you saw, we started to see tables that had a P01, like a population table. The tables all have identifiers, and the tables, they mean something. Those identifiers mean something. So we produce a lot of data, and we produce it in different types of tables, so that it's relevant for the users when they're looking for funding. So I want to explain to you what the table numbers mean to kind of help you with searching. So on the left here, we have detailed tables, which are base or collapsed tables. And that's exactly what they are. They're base tables about a subject. Subject tables are just that. They are specific to a subject. So they'll be specific to employment or specific to housing or specific to veterans. It's a specific subject table with details about it. Ranking tables are just what they sound like. They rank, and they're usually available for populations. Geographic comparison tables compare geographies, and supplemental tables are those supplements for the products that we don't have regularly. Like the supplemental tables would be any of the, not from the ACS, but any of the other tables that are, it's an add-on from a survey. We do add-ons to surveys to fill needs. Data profiles, DPs, are what we're gonna look at next. And DPs, I like them because it's a high-level profile on a variety of subjects. There's four types of DPs. And then the narrative profiles are not found in this tool, but if you do any grant writing, let me know and I'll show you how to get to narrative profiles. They're wonderful because they do the writing for you. It takes the data and it puts it in paragraph format that's understandable with graphs and charts. And so you can find those on the ACS 5-year and they're easy to pull up. And then comparison profiles compare data from year to year. And then selected population profiles are for selected population groups. So those happen every 5 years, and they would be not just to find the AIAN, which is the American Indian Alaska Native population, but the people that are within those, Navajo or Salish, whatever they identify within those population groups. So in this case study, we're going to look at the data profiles, and I think these are the next easiest tables to look at. So if I'm considering a new job in Marion, first of all, I may want to consider a lot of things. Can I afford to live there? What kind of jobs are available? What's the income expected to be? So there's a lot that you can look at, but the DP, if you type DP in a search or specifically DP 02, 03, 04, 05, you will get characteristics, social characteristics if you type in DP 02. Or DP 03 will give you economic, and DP 04 will give you housing. And DP 05 is kind of a repeat of the census questions. Again, it's that basic age, sex, and housing information. So I wanted to explain the tables so that when we're looking at the tables, they make a little more sense. The first digit on a table is the type of table. The next two are the subjects of the table. And the next three are any unique identifiers that are applied to the subject. And the last one, the race generation, oh, you can't see it very well, but it has an A. Not all tables have that available. Some of them do, and if they have the race generation, you can look specifically at that race. And the letter that's coordinated with the race will follow that table. Okay, so we'll go into our example. So we'll go back to the data.census.gov, and we're going to type DP in the advanced search. So let me get back. Okay, so from here, we can type something in, we can type the DP or a DP02 in here, but for this example, let's go to the advanced search right here. I hate it because it's very small, but this lands you on the page without anything in a filter. So advanced search lands you here, and we haven't made any selections here. But in the top global search, if I type DP and hit search, it's going to give me the full list of all the DP tables. So I can see here I have all the DPs that are available, and I don't have any geographies selected. So I can go over here and select my geography. It's on the left menu, and from the filters you can see that there are geographies. It gives some, and then at the bottom it gives all. If you don't see the geography type you want, you can go to all geographies here and see that full list and make a selection from there. And then you can select from your topics. If you know the survey that you want or the year that you want, you can select that. I do caution people selecting a year unless you know what data is available. Population estimates come out before ACS, and sometimes people say, well, I obviously want the most current year, and then they're not going to get the ACS. So unless you're sure that data is released, I would be cautious using the year. But for this example, I clicked on all geographies and this full list came up. If I want to remove that filter so I don't have to search through it, I can hit that X. So you can open and close the filters. So we still have our DP and our table, and it's telling me there are 10 different DP table types. But if I want to select my geography, I have to select the lowest level that I want first. I can't say I want Flathead County and a place within it. I have to select the lowest level first. So under place level, it opens up a screen to select within geographies, and then when I click on place, because I want a city, I can click on Montana and it gives me all the places to select from here. I can also type up here in the top of geography that I want. But I'm gonna look for Marion, and you can follow along to look for Marion, or you can look at a different geography, but you can see how many CDPs are in here. There are a lot. And Marion is a CDP, so I'm just gonna put a check mark next to it. So I added a check mark next to Marion from my list. And I can see in the upper left-hand corner in my filters, it added Marion up here. So now I have something in my filters. And I'm gonna hit the X again to close that drawer to remove my geography filters. And it gives me my DPs that are associated with Marion. And it gives me the ability to view all the tables. And this one, we are gonna look at, I don't remember if we're looking at PPO 2 or 3 or 4. We're gonna look at economic characteristics here. So I'm gonna select DPO 3. I can click on DPO 3, but below it, I can see a plus sign. And if I click on view all 15, I can see the number of years it goes back. If Marion qualified, had enough population to qualify for the 1-year data, I would see ACS 5-year and 1-year in this dropdown, okay? But it doesn't. It only qualifies for the 5-year. It doesn't have 65,000 in population. It will default to the 1-year population. It always will default to the 1 year unless it's not an option. If it's not an option, it will default to the 5-year. So then I can select this first line item, or I can just hit the hyperlink here because it will give me the most current data that's available. So if I click on the DPO 3, it opens up this table here to the right. And this double chevron right here, I can slide that over if I want a better view of my table. I don't have to look at all these other DP items. And it doesn't have it in my filter over here for the DP. It's only giving me DP because I typed it in the search at the top, okay? So I'm gonna slide that over and look at what I have going on in here. And actually I don't want DP, I was looking at, can I afford to live here for like housing? So this will tell me about employment.
I'm lost. Okay, I made it big and now I can't figure out how to make it small again.
Okay, let's see.
So I'm where you're at, but how do I go back to it if I wanted to shrunk back down again before this?
Before you're,
When we clicked on the chevrons?
oh, okay, if you go back to the filter.
Ah, okay.
Okay, so in the left, if you click on filter, it opens up your filters again. And then you can close them out. Filter always gets you back to the home page. So clicking on the filter opens up the table, or you can click it again and it closes it. So just clicking that filter in the upper left-hand corner right up here.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, so looking at this table for DPO 3, below it, it's telling me what I'm looking at. I'm looking at selected economic characteristics. And it's telling me I'm looking at American Community Survey, and I'm looking at the year 2022, the 5-year estimate. Across here are more action items. I can look at the notes for this table. It's telling me I've selected one geographic type. If I were to select two geographies, say Flathead County and Marion, I can select two different types of geography. It would show a 2 in there because it's the number of geographies. It tells me about my topic. Codes are for economic, NAICS codes. But it's telling me I have 1 year selected. And under the hide, I can manipulate my table. So if I click hide, if I want to get rid of any rows or columns, I can do that in the hide. I can also transpose the table so it flips it around, and I can send it back to the original with the subjects down the left. This is unique for ACS. We post the margin of error. So the MOE is how well did we collect the data. So sometimes the margin of error is higher than the actual number because we had low participation or people didn't answer a particular question. And that's why you'll see the margin of error posted. We often see high margins of error on tribal areas. They don't want to answer questions, so we don't know how accurate the data is, and then we post that. If you don't care, you need the data anyway, and the margin of error doesn't matter to you, you can click that and get rid of it. You can just see your estimate and your percent. So you can add it back in or you can remove it. We like to say if you're plus or minus 10 on it, it's pretty accurate data. But sometimes it's the only data available. And even if the margin of error is high, it's the data you have to use because it's the only data that federal funding is applicable for. So all we can do is encourage people to participate, but we do tell people how accurately we collect the data. It is for each subject that we collect the data too. So someone may be filling out their ACS and they get to income and they say, I'm not telling them how much my household income is, and they'll leave that blank. So that line item might be higher with the margin of error than other line items. But we collect in ACS if you are 16 and over for employment. Current population survey for BLS collects if you're 14 and over. So different baseline, different data set. And that's why when you see numbers that don't add up about things like unemployment, and one politician says, this is the unemployment, and this one says, this is the unemployment, they're probably both right. It's where did they get the data? What's their source for the data? Because your baseline is obviously different if you include the 14 and 15-year-olds versus the 16 and up. And it will change also if you're asking, are you collecting unemployment insurance or are you just not employed? Some people choose not to be employed and some are collecting unemployment insurance. So this one is a very basic survey in that we ask if you're employed or not. It doesn't say, are you full-time or part-time? It's, are you employed? And then it goes into details. Anytime a table indents, it's related to the subject above. So this is the employment status, and this is for the population 16 and over. And then the number of 16 and over that are employed in the labor force is 627, and there's 931 people 16 years and over. So anytime it indents, it's related to the subject above, and then it'll start again on the outside when it indents or is related above. So for this one, like female 16 and over, there's 425, but in the labor force, there's 246. Okay. And this one goes into details about commuting. So if I'm planning on moving to Marion, chances are I'm going to have to know how I'm gonna get to work. Probably if I'm not gonna live there, walking is not an option. And probably public transportation doesn't look like an option, so, it looks like I'm gonna need a car. Maybe some public transportation, but it doesn't look like that's an option, for regular working either. And then the types of occupation and the industry are included, class of workers and income. So in this particular one, we have total household income, and then we have median household income. And we have how the income is brought in. Is it earned income? Is it with Social Security? Is it retirement, supplemental? So not all income is earned. How is food or how is money coming into the home? And we have family, and then we have non-family incomes. And then health insurance. What's coming with that employment? Do we have health insurance, or are people using public health insurance? So it gives me details about employment for this selected economic profile. Are there any questions about looking at DPs? Okay, I like DPs because they're high level, and it gives you all the information, the basic information about each subject. And it gives you an estimate and a percent. Not all tables do that. Some only give you the estimate and some only give the percent. It again relates to Title 13 or 26 if they're going to compromise identity by giving the total numbers or the percentages. So that's what determines it. You can, if you've made any changes to your table, restore it at the action items in the top, and you can download anything in Excel or CSV or Zips. And then you can share it or print it. Sharing really is just copying the link. But if you copy the link, if, for example, you put multiple geographies in and you want to recall those geographies to look at other data over time, save that link because you can recall it. You can save that, copy that link and paste it in. It'll send you directly here if you have multiple searches in here. And you can always just change the topic, change the year. You can go back to your filters and adjust. But it's helpful to recall those links. And then this gives you the ability to map. You can either map it here or at the top. Our landing page was all that we clicked on tables, so now we're in tables. We can click on maps. We only have one geography. It's not going to be very interesting to look at the map, but this is a great way to look at the map. And we could scroll in, but we'll do that in the next example where we can compare some geographies. So are there any questions about looking for a specific table type, like the data profiles? Okay.
Jen had asked me a while back about labor force participation rate by state for childcare stuff we're working on.
Okay.
And I messed around and I really couldn't figure that out.
Okay. Is it for a program?
Was just in general, we were comparing against, some other states have been doing different kinds of programs to facilitate, the construction of more childcare centers. They're facilitating those, and so we were looking at the participation rate. In particular, we had a call with some folks from the State Chamber in Kentucky, where they've done some interesting programs, and they were talking about their participation rate, and in their case, their participation rate was influenced by people who had like opioid addiction, like the Appalachian area. So they were taking, so we were trying to find just data from Montana.
Okay, so you want data on the working population with children, which you can find in the DPs, and then do you want the number of daycares
Yeah, really, it as much data as possible.
Okay.
So for a search like that, you would look at multiple tables because, daycares would be under, an industry type. And I hate to tell you this, there are about 60 programs that collect data on industry. So it depends on how frequently you want the data for that. For that example, I would look at something other than ACS because, for that workforce and that industry, there is quarterly data that comes out, but it will be at the county level.
I'm gonna ask you afterwards,
Okay,
some pointers.
yeah.
I'm collating basically all of these points of data everywhere, trying to distill it down into a dashboard that will pull all of this.
Yeah, and for that, I would use a different data set only because, since the pandemic, we've had so many changes in how people are working. They're working from home and daycare, and do they want on-site or, what's going on? So something more current, I think would be helpful, and the LEHD would be helpful.
Okay, yeah, I can see.
Yeah. Okay, we actually have a lot of time. So we are very good. Okay, so I cleared my search out by hitting the logo and it sends me back to the home page. And in this, actually from the homepage, let me point out a few things. If you scroll down on here, it gives you kind of some examples about exploring tables. It gives some guidance on looking at maps, but it also has microdata if you want to build custom tables. That also I caution because you need 100,000 or more for the Pumas to use those data sets. But this is the staff that built this website. And so they work on building it and updating it. And they put together videos. So if you have trouble finding or searching, I would just look at their videos. They're short little videos, but they'll kind of help you get started again. We do know at the Census Bureau, not everybody's on our website every day. And so it's not easy when you take a class or you navigate it and then you go, wait, well, what was I doing? Plus, we are constantly changing it. We're always updating it. And what you see today might not be the same tomorrow. So keep that in mind. But there's always help and guidance down here. You can always go to this help tab under the main search as well. They also are collecting feedback. So if you can't find something or you don't like it, they literally go through the feedback. Like I'll get a call and they'll say, Kim, are you in Montana? We've got a lot of requests from Montana. What did you do up there? Like there's problems. So they do go through the feedback and then they want to know what's helpful, what's working, what's not. And they make an assessment every month. What do they need to improve based on user feedback? They do actually take that feedback. I know people don't think the government ever listens, but this team does do it. So, okay, so we're going to go to advanced search again here. So we'll go back to our blank screen. And in this example, we're not going to put a DP or anything in. But I want to show you how you can add different geographies that are not the same type. And then we'll look at adding the same types of geographies to compare. So in the geography section, if I click on state, and then in the search, I can go to Montana and just put a check mark at Montana. It'll add it to my filter up here. So, but I don't have to do anything to exit out of it if I want to compare it to my county. So then I click on county and then it's going to ask me, rather than search through the full list alphabetically, because counties nest within a state, to search within a state. So then I'll select within Montana and then I'll select Flathead County. So so now in my filters, I have Montana and I have Flathead County. And then, if I want to add a place, I can add a place. You can add up to 260 geographic levels. They can be of the same type or different types, in a search. So, it would take a while if you did all different ones, but for this one, we'll use three examples. So I have state and I have county, and then I'm going to select place. Within place, I can select within another geography, so I don't have to search the full list of in Montana. I don't have to use the within at the top, but I can select within, and it gives me different options of within what. What do I want within a particular county? And so if I select county, it reduces the list to look at only counties, and then I can select within Flathead County. Again, you don't have to, you can go through the full list. You don't have to search within, but it reduces that list. I rarely use it. Out here in the West, we don't have that many cities. Where if I'm looking for something in Maryland, I do use within because they have so many places. So then I'll collect or add Kalispell City. So now I have 3 types of geography added. And I'm going to close that filter by just hitting that arrow to move everything over. And from here, I can then select any of these topics here, or I can just go to the lower right corner where there's a search. So if tables don't appear, the system thinks you're still searching for something. And so if you don't have a topic or anything you want to search for, you can just hit search. And it'll bring a list of the tables that are available for those geographies. And what it does is it brings the most current table available. And so what it's giving us are information from the Household Pulse Survey. This is one that I was sharing with one of the attendants here. We started during the pandemic. We collaborated with like 13 other agencies because we realized we don't have data on something we need now. And so we would ask questions like, are you employed? Did you change employment? Are you working from home when you didn't before? What's the food scarcity situation at home? Are your children going to school or are they schooling from home? And the data would come out every 2 weeks. And so that's why this one is at the top, because this data comes out every 2 weeks. And although it's not so much related to the pandemic questions that we asked then, this survey evolves. So during the pandemic, we asked, are you going to get vaccinated? And what's your hesitancy if you're not? And now we ask, what are the gas prices doing to your lifestyle? Is it impacting you getting around? What's the economy? What's the food scarcity? So it evolves based on the current situation. So that's why this one's at the top, because
Some of those sound like they'd be really varied responses. So is it on a scale of 1 to 10 type of responses? Or how do you collect those?
the Household Pulse Survey is actually done via text. We text, it was via text, it still is. And, but there's boxes to check. You can't just say, oh, today I worked 3 hours from home, it's saying, are you hybrid? Are you, it'll ask more details. That's a good
It's not a
question.
fill in the blank type of thing.
Yeah. We have some fill in the blanks, but rarely on anything other than race. Race is the fill in the blank because people don't find what they want to be identified by. And so then that helps us to do research on race. How do people want to be identified? What are we missing that we need to take to OMB and say, hey, people are saying they're this. We need to reevaluate the definitions or reevaluate what it is. Uh-huh. And then the next thing you'll see are the economic surveys. So it'll all be based on what's current and what's available. So the most recent publications, but I'm gonna go to this table here, this S0102, the population 60 and over. And I'm gonna click on the view all. I can see here where I have that ACS 1 year and the 5 year. So let me show you what happens if I select the 1 year. Because one or more of my geographies qualify for the 1 year, it gives me that option. It doesn't identify that Kalispell doesn't qualify. So what I'll see in my table, if I scoot all my search over, is I'll only see the state of Montana. It won't tell me why I didn't get the county. It won't tell me why I didn't get Kalispell. So you as a user have to remember that you've selected 1 year. And from the table, when you see that happen right here from this below the header, you can change that to the 5 year, and then it will show those other geographies I selected. That's where that default to the 1 year will come into place. It'll happen for any type of table that doesn't qualify. So as long as one geography qualifies, it will bring up a table. So then when I select the 5 year, I can see the comparison for Montana with Flathead County. And then where is Kalispell? I lost it somewhere. I lost it. Oh, I forgot to ask if they have questions. I forget about them. I'm sorry.
You're doing really good. Let's see. I think I was just so absorbed in what you were saying too that I wasn't paying attention.
I've been watching your chat.
Oh, thank you.
Not seeing
Thank
any
you.
questions in there.
Yeah, so I should get all three. But when I get all three of those geographies, if I select a map, it's not going to give me, because I didn't select a specific geography, and mapping really only works for like geographies. So all counties, all tracts, things like that. If you have multiple geographies, it'll only view one geography at a time on the map. So the map is not really helpful, but it's helpful just to look at tables when you have different types of geography in your search for anything in this data tool. Some of the other tools you can do overlays like Census Business Builder. Who was it that works with economic business development?
Janelle.
Oh, okay, yeah. So we have a tool it's called Census Business Builder, and it has economic and demographic data infused in one tool, so you can look at all of that data on the map. It's a map.
Is that the next level of learning? Like once we get through this lesson, we'll be smart enough to go use that.
Census Business Builder, yeah.
Awesome.
Census Business Builder is very powerful because we also infuse purchase data from Esri. So Esri is a big mapping firm, and when we have enough interest and we get enough requests, people say, hey, I'm starting a restaurant and I want to know how do people spend money on alcohol? Do they buy it and take it home? Do they drink it at the restaurant? And so when we get enough questions, we put those data into the Census Business Builder.
And then a business can use that information to gear their decisions moving forward.
Yeah, they just run a report on that geography and it spits out, how do people spend money? Where do they spend money? What can they expect to pay? What's the competitor look like? How many, if maybe I want a specific type of restaurant like Mexican, how many are in the area that are Mexican? So who's my competition, and do we have too many Mexican restaurants? Do we need more? Things like that. So Census Business Builder is powerful for that because it infuses a lot of data.
we want to be able to teach all of our local businesses how to use that.
Census Business Builder is powerful. I'll tell you the downfall of Business Builder. Because businesses, we can't compromise identity. So if I'm the one of 4 Mexican restaurants in my town, it's gonna show there's restaurants, but not Mexican restaurants, right? Because we can't compromise the identity and show, because it shows payroll and costs to run the business and, you know, how many people are employed. So it gets very detailed. We can't show it. So you may have to go to a county level. It's that trade-off of how granular and cross-tabulated are you getting versus the geographic slides. Does that make sense? Yeah, so Business Builder is helpful. Out here, I always think the county level is helpful. City and place level, it gets a little tough because it's gonna say no data when we get too granular. But yeah, we can do, that's a whole another tool. And the other one to take a note about is LEHD.
And what's that mean?
It's the longitudinal household employment dynamics. I know, isn't that awful? Yes.
I'm probably not gonna get that on there.
Yeah.
LEHD?
Longitudinal employment household dynamics. Okay, so that kind of gives you an example of multiple geographies and what you'll get when you search for that. I'm gonna clear my filters, but this time rather than the logo, I can just go to clear filters right here. And it asks me, do I want to keep anything in my current search? And for this example, I don't want to. So in this example, let's look at all, let's look at veteran data, and let's look at for all the census tracts in Flathead County. So you can see what it looks like on a map and what census tracts look like if you've never worked in them. So I'm back at 0 and I don't have anything in my filters. And I can start with either topics or geography. It doesn't matter which one. I can go to topics or I can do geography. I think sometimes it's helpful to start with topics if you know a specific topic that you want, because it will filter out geographies that are not available. Okay, so if they're not available, it'll take them out already for you. And same with geography. If I search for a very low level geography like blocks, it's going to tell me the only topics are available from the 2020 census and the decennial censuses. So if I go down here in my filters, I'm just going to scroll down to topics. And it has the categories of topics, and veterans would fall under population and people. So if I click on population and people, it gives me the subcategories of population and people, and I can see here veterans is listed. So I'll click on veterans, and it adds veterans up here to my filter. I'm going to hit that X because I don't want any more subjects other than veterans. And so what it does is it gives me the first table that has information about veterans at the top. And it gives me that 1-year ACS. I haven't selected any geographies yet. So I'm going to go now to my geographies and I'm going to select census tract. So if I click on census tract and I'm going to go within a census, I want to find the census tracts within Montana. And when I click on Montana, I then want to filter within a county. So within the county of Flathead. And now it lists all the tracts. So if I say all tracts within Flathead County, it starts listing them all. So I'm going to select all of them because we want to look at what does it look like within Flathead. So does everyone have that? They've got veterans and all tracts within a county. Okay, and I'm going to hit my X and get rid of that filter. maybe this laptop is set up different than mine, and so I hit the wrong things every time. Okay, so, oh no, it's fine. I'm left-handed, so the way I set mine up is different. Okay, so I'm gonna hit my X, and I'm gonna also scoot my my tables over, because I do want this first table. I want this subject table, this S2101 about veterans. And it's telling me right here that I have 13, and if I look, I can see they're all the ACS 5-year. So all in one is 5-year, so that's all that's available, because tracks are never gonna have 65,000 or more people in them. And we'll slide that over. So what I can find out about the veterans, first of all, I get the total civilian population that's 18 and over. So my first column tells me my total. Here's my estimate, my margin of error, my percent. The next column shows me my veterans. So then I can compare my total with my veterans. And I'm gonna scoot my margins of error out of the way so I can see that. And then the third column gives me the non-veterans. So if you were to subtract the veterans from the total population, you would get the non-veterans. But it gives me the details in this subject table about the veterans. And this is helpful to know how do they need served? What are their ages? What's their education? And so it tells me, when did they serve? What period did they serve in? Are they male or female? It breaks down the age categories. And the age categories start at 18 and they go over to over 75. It gives me race categories. And the ethnicity of Hispanic will always follow the race. It gives me the income. So here's my total income and here's my veterans. And then we can see educational attainment, the employment status. So here's the total for the 18 to 64-year-olds. And here are the veterans and the non-veterans. So it really focuses in on what do the veterans look like? Are they living in poverty compared to the rest of the population? Which is helpful because it might look like a high number, but when you look at the rest of the population, it might not be. Or it may be very high compared to the rest of the population. And I don't know why.
Kimberly, when there's a high homeless population of veterans, how that's probably not included.
Yeah, that's a really good question. We do not, everything that we collect demographically is pinpointed to a household. So it's geocoded literally to a house. So for example, if you get your mail at a post office, we have someone comes to your house because we may mail your survey to your physical address. You never get it because the post office doesn't connect them, and someone comes to your house to ask your survey questions. Because we do everything geocoded, homeless population is very hard for us to count. We do collect information at soup kitchens, at housing refuge, but it's transient. So we don't have homeless as a subject because it's always a pinpoint to a residence with demographic data. We have a lot of questions about that, and the VA is constantly tracking that. Homeless populations, I think, are best found by your county. Your county usually has a good count on that. We do in the decennial. We do that in shelter, which would be like the soup kitchens and things. But, you know, that was in 2020, 4 years ago. So I would recommend homeless, in particular veterans, checking with the county resources. They usually have a better count.
I was just wondering if there was anything else that we could extrapolate from that.
Yeah, it's a kind of a bummer
It
because
is a hard,
they're transient and to pinpoint them is
yeah,
hard.
it makes sense.
And even when we do decennial, we try to count them as they come through a soup kitchen. But then they may go to a shelter at night and then we have to check, did we double count them? And identification is often vague. And so then we don't know, did we double count them? Did we miss them? Sometimes they don't want to be found and yeah, it's a tough one. Yes, really is. Yeah, good luck with that one. That's what I'll tell you. That's a tough one. Okay, and so then we go into the characteristics, like the disability of the veterans and income and poverty. So you can really find detailed information in subject tables about a particular group. We can find like on the children or the elderly population where funding goes out, what's going on. So I'm looking at this and I've got these census tracts and they go across the top here, but I don't know where they are. And this is where the map is helpful. So if I click on the map, it brings and all I did was click this map at the top. Whatever's in my table is what it maps. And so the first line item in the table I was looking at is what shows up on the map. So this is the civilian population 18 and over. But I can use this little drop down next to that, and I can select any of the items from the table in here and have that be mapped. So if I want to select like the labor force participation or unemployment rate, I can select those line items and map those line items. Okay, and so you can see how much it changes the map, and it gives, this is by percent. And so this is showing, let me see if I can, whoops, scroll in on this, the tracks. And so you can see them. And if I scroll in close enough using the plus, it identifies those track numbers right here. So I can see what's going on. I can also change the classification. If I want it quantile, equal, interval, or manual, but it defaults to natural, and I can change the data classes. So I think it goes up to 9 classes. Yeah. So I can, classes changes this, it changes the percent more granular. So you can get focused in more on a percentage, where at the 5, it gives a larger range. 5 is the so it gives that larger range. Okay. So are there any questions about mapping or how you use the map? It's much simpler than it used to be. We used to have to go into Fact Finder and designate that you wanted a map or that you wanted the data in a table. But here you can toggle between the table and the map right at the top. You can switch between them, and you can switch the subject that you're mapping right here at the top. So if I wanted to see anybody that served in the Gulf War or later from 2001, I can map that. You can map anything in the table then. All right. Are there any questions about using the map or using multiple geographies in the tables, whether they're like or not like?
Okay, so if we wanted to say, compare these 3 counties in Montana and show us on a chart, what the average median income is, how would we get that to turn into a chart for us to show us that?
That's a good question. Yeah. So the geographic profile, the first thing we looked at with the chart, it only allows a single geography. So if you wanted to create a chart, and I'll go back to the PowerPoint because I do have, I created a chart on the PowerPoint showing median income. to do that, I just did it on Excel. So I downloaded the table in Excel. And then in Excel, I created the chart.
Oh, shot you back to the beginning, sorry.
No, that's okay. This toggling, we're not friends. That's what I'll say. This toggling, we are struggling with today.
You're better than I would.
Okay, so here I just dropped it in Excel, and I don't know if you use Excel or CSV, but you can chart anything, and so I just charted on here. So for this example, looking at the median income by sex, I did 4 counties when I'm considering where do I want to live if I take a job in Marion, and these are the neighboring counties, and so I can see looking at the table, which I extracted this data from a table, I can see as a female, I'm making a lot less than a male. And I can see what it looks like in comparison to Flathead County to other counties. So I'm more likely to make more in Flathead County, whether I'm a male or female. So yeah, it doesn't chart multiple geographies, it only charts single in the geographic profile. Yeah.
But it plays real nicely with Excel.
Yeah. So let me go back over there. So in the slides, these are not really going to be relevant, but when you get the slides, I just noted the things, the action items for tables, and I noted the action items for mapping. So I tried to give some direction for on the slides. So when you get the PDF, it'll tell you what you can and can't do.
Nice.
And then for our case study, I'm sorry, I didn't go back to the question, but in this case study, so I can see in comparison, the percent of veterans and by age. And so this, when I compared the city of veterans versus the total population, I can see what the age categories are. So it's probably very small to read, but 18 to 34 are in the orange. And so if I'm working specifically with veterans, it gives me an idea how many people are 18 to 34 in the county, and then how many are actually veterans. And this table, usually if I hover over it, it highlights the exact number, but it gives you that by age. And so you can see in the city of Kalispell, the number of veterans is 75 and over. The green is the higher number of veterans. Most of the veterans are over 75 in the city of Kalispell versus the total population in Kalispell. It's not nearly as high. So if I'm going to serve or I'm applying for grants for veterans, I may want to focus on those that are older, the older population of veterans, just as I would in the county. The higher number is the older population. Okay, does that make sense? But the link is here, so you can look at the link for that table. I tried to put the links for each of the tables in, so you can just go click on those and it'll send you directly to those tables. Awesome. Okay. And I think, and then going through kind of the mapping and how you can look at the mapping, and then the tools for the mapping. What action items you can take. So it is a powerful tool to do basic demographic searching for any specific like employment. I would recommend the LEHD or the Census Business Builder, which pulls in from multiple sources. This tool allows you to look at a single table and on a single subject, which is very granular, low level detail. Some of the other data products like LEHD only go down to county or place level. You won't get lower level than that because it comes in from the state. And it is determined on social security, like what are people reporting to the county? We've started some new programs where we have self-employed information that will be ingested, so it's not just those that are reporting. If I'm self-employed, we'll get that data now, but that will take, I think, another 18 months before we get that full set in, because it'll take us 3 years to collect before we can do comparisons to adjust it. So that's another program that's growing on the economic front. Economic data is always evolving. It's always changing how we collect it. And we recently changed some of those surveys so that we have specific data on self-employed, because so many people are self-employed or contract workers. They just do contracts, and so they wouldn't fall in employment data.
That's a pretty big group to lose track of.
It is, because it's a big gap that we don't have filled, because we have the government data for the economics, or the census of governments and the economic census, and then those supplementals. But that one is such a big one, and it's a growing number as well. So
Is there currently a best source for getting that data?
well, right now we gather it. We just finished the economic census. So the economic census happens in years that end in 2 and 7. So we're just beginning to publish the economic census data. And then all of the other economic surveys, the survey of business owners and all of those are ongoing surveys, and give that supplemental data that's happening. So the economy is a big one, and it's always changing. How people self-report for their business and what's reported to the counties or extracted from administrative data is also done. Some of the issues that we run into when we run the economic census, we send the survey out. There are about 800 types of surveys, depending on the type of business that you have. And so based on the description of your business, we send you a survey, but it may not really match. And people say, wait, I'm not a veterinarian. Why did I get this survey? So we have to reassess, because their name might not be understandable. But this past economic census was the first one. We did not require everyone. We did use administrative records as well. So we used administrative records as well as doing the economic census. We had such a decline for participation in the last economic census, the 2017, that's kind of prompted us to evolve. We've got to use more reliable data that we already have, because when we don't have participation, we're not showing the true accuracy of what we look like.
I was definitely wondering about how you're doing with participation, because when you said that many of them are sent by text and things like that, I know I get a lot of text to do this poll or this survey. And I've always been told, even as a kid, the Census Bureau is the important one. Always fill that out. And so I'm like, well, how do I know if this is
How do you
legit?
know?
Or so I just end up deleting all of them. I'm like, well, I hope that one didn't matter.
Yeah, though, if you're in a survey and you don't participate, someone comes knocking on your door. The field reps are local, and so they come and they say, hey, I'm with the Census Bureau, I'm collecting for this survey. But most people are like, it's not a census year. What are you doing here?
Mm-hmm.
And so they don't know that we have all these other surveys that they're collecting for on an ongoing basis. And we really see it where a post office is where people get their mail, because the post office doesn't connect the two. They don't connect your physical address. And everything we do is geocoded to a physical address. It has to be a physical address, because if we do it to post office boxes, it looks like 3,000 people live in that post office. So it's geocoded to an address. We do run into some questionable things when that happens. We did have like the IRS reach out to us and say, what's happening in this county in South Dakota, where this gentleman had a legitimate business that he was allowing people to register their their RVs or campers when they were snowbirders and they no longer had a home at his place. So they could register it. He was processing their mail in his barn and sending it where they were each week. But it looked like all those people were living in his barn. And they weren't, but how else would we know that they weren't unless we go check out what's happening at this one resident, you know? So we do work with other agencies when there's anomalies and things like that. We did have, like in Nevada, during the 2010, there was a temporary installation where they were doing some auto testing, and they were temporary, and we counted them there. They had temporary barracks. They gave us their group quarters count, and then they moved out, and they said, wait, we don't have 600 people in Nevada anymore. But we already did the census, and they're like, it looks like we blew up our people because there's no one there now. And we're like, well, that's where the census is. Where are you on April 1st or most of the time? And that's where they were. But yeah, so there's funny things that come up like that, but we don't ever change censuses. Once it's stamped and recorded, that's the way it is. So if you were recorded as a male or a female by your parents as a child, that's what you are for that census. So yeah, we can't backdate, we can't change. We only it's a stamp in time. So yeah, but some of the other tools we have just a few minutes. I'll show you some of the others that might be helpful for you guys. Because we have a lot of products that would be helpful for employment, to just study the employment dynamics. And so let me enlarge this. So part of the census homepage, there's always alerts at the top that say, hey, we've got this going on. But you'll notice an official website of the US government is always posted on any official government site. So it doesn't mean that other sites that have our data are bad and wrong, but if it's official government, it'll say that. We have like the rural health out of North Dakota. They use census data, they use BLS data, and they do these fabulous tabulations for everybody, but it's not a census or a government site. So under the data and map tab, if I hover over that, this list on the right, it says data tools and apps. Clicking on that gives me my full list of data products. And so you can see it's listed alphabetically, and it gives a little description about each of the tables. And so like here is Census Business Builder. This is where you can find all of the data products. The Census Survey Explorer that I talked about earlier. And it might be on page 2. There's 2 pages of it. Okay, so the job-to-job flows, the LEHD, these are all part of the local employment dynamics. So if I click on local employment dynamics, this is the longitudinal employer household dynamics. So some of the new things that we're doing with this are job to job. If you left a job, what job did you go to and where did you go? So when we had a lot of people working in the oil fields, what job did they come from and what job did they go to and where are they migrating?
Huge layoffs with lumber mills. And so we could use this to track where they're going after the lumber.
Okay. Yeah. And then we have on the map for emergency management where we work with FEMA, and it literally maps that ACS data that we looked at today along with any disaster number. So if there's a fire and it's growing by the tracks, you can look at the data in on the map for emergency management. It gets updated every 2 hours. So if that fire is growing, what's helpful is then not only can we see the the housing that's affected, the houses are gone. We know what industry is gone. We know what occupations are gone. People don't always live where they work. And in this product, you can see where they work and where they live and by industry. So you can see, you know, maybe their house isn't gone, but maybe they don't have a job to go to because the building is gone. So LEHD is very powerful because we have that on the map and on the map for emergency management. It's very, very helpful during fire season. The congressional staffers call during, and they say, wait, what's going on? Because now this fire is growing and who's impacted. And so what they use it for is, do they need people with language skills? Do they need, how many disabled people are in that area? Do we have elderly people? Who do we need to help in those evacuated areas or evacuation areas? You can get that detailed information. So you get it ingest the ACS, but it has the employment dynamics. Now we know we're not going to have, nobody's, the lumber mill's gone. You know, we're not going to have that industry happening. So on the map is helpful, but the rest of the data comes in quarterly. So I'll give you an example of QWI, quarterly workforce investment areas. So here, if I'm looking at Montana, if I default by the geography level of Montana, it gives me the indicator and what's the employment at the beginning of the quarter. So I can change that to hires or separations if people have left jobs. I can look at job creations. I can look at different dynamics in here. So we'll just start with employment by the quarter.
Quick question. With job creations, just to make sure I'm understanding, it's not going to include any of the independent business owners or contractors, even though that's job creation.
Right. If
They're still not counted.
they're not in this yet.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, they will be after we have enough data to put it in there, but we haven't collected it long enough in enough areas to ingest anything that's the self-employed.
But that'll start being available in 18 months?
Yeah, I think it's 18 months that Erlene said that they would ingest it. When we gather data, we have to test it. We have to test that, hey, is this accurate? And when we apply it, and then we have to do the Title 26 and 13 review that we're not compromising identity, and that applies to these data set. So if that happens, they have to suppress it, or they ingest noise into it, infuse noise into it to give an average, and they'll tell you what those noise averages are that they ingest in there. So yes, it does, but it's valuable because you can look at the quarter. You don't have to wait for the year or the 5 year with the ACS. This does it by the quarter, and it gives you that. So if we look at just by the quarter, it breaks it down. The default is by this age group, and it's by the quarters, and I can change that. I can change to look at the yearly average. If I don't want to look at the age, I can look at the NAICS code. If I want to look at the sector of industry. So here I can look at that agriculture, forest, and fish and hunt, and then the mining. So I can look at those by the year or by the quarter for those industries in here. And this is where this is a powerful tool, because you can see more readily what's happening now. The geographies that this allows you to look at are workforce investment. Yeah, so you can look at metro or micros, workforce investment, or counties. So it does give you a variety of geographies to look at. So if I want to change this to look at my workforce investment areas, we've got two in Montana. It's a collection of the workers in an area and they determine it by population. So you're not going to have a lot in Montana, because it's rural, you know, that you don't have a lot of population. But if you look, you could look at counties. You could look at metro micros, but it's gonna leave all those rural people out as well.
So it was showing that Montana has only one workforce investment area then, is that right?
There's two,
Oh.
actually, but there was probably only data for whatever item I had selected on
Okay.
there. Mhm. And so you can look at this on the map and you can graph them, if you want to change it to look at graphs or charts. But this is really, really helpful data for the workforce, what's happening now. Again, it doesn't have the individuals that don't report through the counties, but it still will capture a good portion of the workers. And then you can scroll across here to get, I just cannot use this mouse.
Oh, it's not
There, the first quarter posted is 2023. So you can go across and it does allow you to manipulate and change. You know, you can look at the next sectors and you can look at the 3-digit or the 4-digit, which there's a difference. Are you familiar with NAICS codes? North American Indicators?
We use them every
Okay.
day.
So we publish at the 6-digit code for data, but most of them are published at the 3 or 4. But in a lot of the tools, we go down to the 6-digit, like the data.census.gov goes down to 6-digit. So not just the lumber industry, but what specifically in the lumber industry and so forth. Those are the digits that it goes into. A good example is like cellular devices. So we used to have pagers on there, but we don't use pagers anymore. So it rolls up into a form of communication in cellular communication, but we don't have a specific digit for it. Does that make sense? Now, it's not just items we use or don't use. We have to consider that we don't compromise a business. So if I build airplanes and I specifically transport people, there's a chance Boeing is going to be identified. And so we have to roll that NAICS code up into a mode of transportation by aircraft, but we can't specify that they move people. Maybe we have to just end it at they you know, our large aircraft. And then that falls into the category with shipping industries and things like that. Does that make sense? Because we always have to look at that manufacturing and who's doing what, so we don't compromise and we can roll it up or down. And so that's why the economic census takes us 5 years to publish.
There's a lot of work in it, holy cow.
So, yeah, we can do another training virtually or something on LHD. It's a really powerful tool and there's a lot in here that would be helpful for you guys.
I'd love to follow up with you later and see what we can do about like something like that.
Yeah, yep. It is powerful because it shows direction of travel. We can see where people are traveling, how far they're traveling for different jobs. And this is also where we have the veteran. This is a new product that we're just collecting data on veterans, like what are they earning and by occupation and stuff. So we have to get buy-in for states to do things like this, and we don't have buy-in from everybody, so we can only publish who we get buy-in. But it usually starts with 1 or 2 states, and then they get competitive, and they're like, we wanna do it, and so then we can publish it. But everything in the LEHD is not surveyed, it's reported data. It's reported through the county, it's reported. Okay. It's all reported through. We don't do any surveys for the LHD data.
We could just go down the rabbit hole on data all day with you.
I know, there is a lot, but,
And you said LEHD was only from data, not from survey.
they ingest the ACS in some of the tools, but the data itself is not survey collected. Yeah, it's reported to the counties, it's administrative data.
May I ask one quick question? Sure. A few years ago, Kalispell, the area was identified as the fastest growing micropolitan area in the micropolitan area in the country. Where would I find how we rank today?
Oh, yeah, that's in population estimates. This is awful. That's a whole nother tool. I know it's so bad, but there is some population estimate data in data.census.gov. But the ranking tables for pop estimates, if you go under the data and mapping, I would go under, I think the easiest way to do that is under topics and go to population. Population estimates. Because population estimates are the official counts that happen annually that we get the first deaths and migration from the local governments. Yeah, and so population estimates, if you go under topics, and then it'll give you the list of data here when you click on the data, and it'll give you your options to look at ranking tables and how everything does. And it'll do it all by national, state, or county. All the tables will indicate, do you want to find it by place level? Do you want to find it by county and so on? That's how they rank, or they'll identify the topics. Okay, and you can email me and I'll send you any of those, and we'll send you the rankings as well. Yeah. Are there any other questions? I know we're over time.
We just appreciate you being flexible, because some of us have to work our way out because we've got appointments and meetings, but I think everybody's really enjoyed it. That's where they weren't just running away.
People have lives outside of census. Yes, well, thank you for coming. I hope this was helpful.
Well, thank you for coming all the way from Denver.
Yeah,
We appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, it's my pleasure. It's so pretty here.